What is going on, folks? It is Steiner here with another episode of Secondhand Talent. Thank you to Luke Chu for the desk candy. Thank you to Mark Spusta for the art. And thank you to this week's guest. We don't have mononyms on this show much besides for me. I'm Steiner, sure, but we got one right next to me. Ladies and gentlemen, Hutch. Give it up. Front of house,
Hello.
original front of house for Queens of the Stone Age, among so much more that we're going to get into. Hutch, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, man. My pleasure.
So we got connected in a really roundabout sort of way. Our producer, Mario, is the one who recommended the show to you. And I got to ask, when Mario first approached you and said, hey, there's this podcast you got to be on. It's called Secondhand Talent. What kind of image conjured up in your mind when you heard the name?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure. I like Mario a lot, and I knew that he wouldn't be just pulling my leg, so I figured it was something worth his time. He pulled over. We were driving past each other, and he stopped his car and kind of pulled over and asked me if I was interested. So I thought, okay, this has got to be legit. You know, he wouldn't take the time to get out of his car and talk to me, and he's a good guy, so I figured I'd give it a listen.
I had no idea that that's how it happened.
Yeah.
Shout out Mario. Man, buddy, we love you, man. Show wouldn't be the same without you, man. Well, Hutch, you've a long and storied career. For folks, for our readers, listeners, and viewers who don't know, Hutch was the original front of house man for a small band you may have heard of called Queens of the Stone Age, and a lot more besides for that. But I would like to dive a little bit further back, because engineering is not, we're not born with engineering skills. That's not something we come out knowing, right? I'm kind of curious where your first experiences in music came from and where you first kind of learned to love music itself.
For me, it started back in like junior school, being a theater person. The theater was my refuge in school, and there I learned about production, learned about lighting, I learned about staging and audio, and just always enjoyed that side of production.
Was there a particular production that you had put on or were you a part of that was a kind of more a formative experience?
A friend of mine in school entered a magazine contest, a magazine called Cream Magazine, an old rock magazine, and he entered a contest to win a sound system, and he won it. And so from there, he's like, okay, we've got a band, but we need somebody to run the system we've won. So that's kind of how it started for me.
So you just jumped in head first. And
Yeah.
That's
the gear showed up at our local music store, and it was on.
Do you remember what system it was?
Tapco soundboard and Electro Voice speakers.
And where did that take you? What were you able to generate with that? Like winning a contest, I mean, the odds, and then winning that piece of equipment in a contest. What were you able to then take that forward with?
We played like local bars. We would do like week-long stints in local bars in the interior of British Columbia, like logging towns and some kind of rough bars that didn't really want to see guys with funny haircuts. And we had to make sure that we played a certain amount of cover songs that they could relate to and try to squeak in some of our original music where we could. So yeah, it was a stepping stone. It was a way to learn my trade.
And what was some of the early listening? What were some bands that influenced either your taste in playing or that records that you heard that kind of refined your ear when it came to engineering?
It was the beginning of punk rock, so a lot of the early English punk rock, definitely influential. And just the idea that it was a do it yourself kind of culture, that you could put out a record, you could do your own artwork, you could record yourself. So it was just really encouraging time in music. I think that's the main thing about it is we saw people across the pond doing it and realized that we could do it too.
And just for context, we're talking about I would say mid '80s, roughly.
Oh, early
Is
late 70s, yeah.
late
So
Okay,
yeah, the
so really
Damned,
the
Sex
beginning.
Pistols, the Clash, a lot of the titans of the early English punk rock movement. And the great thing about English punk rock is it really expanded into ska and rockabilly, and really kind of we were all exploring other musics. It was great for that. It was okay to explore other music
Would you
and bring it
say
back
that?
into your music.
Well, so I was just gonna say, what elements or genres did you bring into your own playing incorporation in those earlier years?
Um, I mean, the simplicity of music like rockabilly, whereas you didn't need a whole lot of microphones to do it. You got a rhythm with the kick and the snare, and made sure the vocals sat on top of that, and then the guitars just ripped. It was yeah, yeah, yeah.
And speaking of
Just kind of
guitarists,
a minimalist approach. Is how we all started.
on that, before we get to the guitarist, the minimalist approach, I was watching a clip of an interview recently of Les Claypool. He was talking about trying to get the Stuart Copeland sound. And they bought all the gear, they got everything tuned perfectly. And he said when they got together and did Oysterhead, they were over at the barn and Fishman had some like crappy Ludwig, set. And Stewart put it together, started playing, and just sounded like himself.
Yeah.
Like, it's how you attack the instrument, it's how you put yourself into it. That's what then comes out of it.
Billy Gibbons is one of the best examples that I've ever been around. When he recorded with the Queens, he showed up with just a guitar and no amplifiers, and sat in the control room with the guitar, and even not even plugged in, he sounded like Billy Gibbons. Like
It
you
reminds
immediately knew it was him, even
it,
without amplification.
Absolutely. It reminds me of another a previous guest friend of the show, Freak Bass. He said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, respectfully, I could give you the exact same bass with the exact same equipment and show you exactly the same notes and how I'm playing them and the timing, and we will sound different.
Yeah,
And that's,
I would agree. Yeah,
in this world of being overly dominated by AI and artificial ways of entertaining us, it's something that I like to call the IA, or the individual affect, and that's what I believe carries on the legacy of music, is that element of true humanity that just can't really be replicated.
absolutely.
So back to our earlier question that I skipped over. Speaking of prodigious guitarists, one of your early friends in the music scene is Josh Hum. How did that friendship really? How did that come about?
The people who helped him with early Kyuss record were familiar with engineering I'd done for a band called DOA, a Canadian punk rock band from the late 70s, early 80s, and liked my aggressive approach to the mix and thought it would apply to Kyuss. So they just reached out to me and asked me if I was interested. And Josh was just a young fellow back then in his teens.
Was it a kind of a so first of all, so when did Caius cease and Queens of the Stone Age begin?
Wow,
Or
that would
did
be something to.
did Caius cease? Is it
Yeah, Caius definitely stopped, and Josh went up north to Seattle and went to business college and educated himself a bit, because I think there was some things he learned about the music business after Caius, and just wanted to be more knowledgeable about how to go forward with it and protect himself and to make good decisions.
and was it or when the band started, when Queens of the Stone Age started, was it kind of like instantly like Hutch is who I want to be engineering our music? Was that kind of like a
Oh, definitely, he called me. Yeah, he called me right away.
and was it was it like I've always been curious about this because when I was growing up, Queens of the Stone Age was such a formative band in my life, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I'm very curious, and I've been curious to ask you, in the early years of the band, was it a slow burn coming up, just kind of like everyone? Because again, when I was a younger man than I am now, it was Queens of the Stone Age. And I've been so curious to ask what it was like, in those earlier years, and if it felt like it was really going somewhere, or if there was maybe some uncertainty.
I think Kyuss kind of set up Queens of the Stone Age to be, we were a band's band. Like a lot of like we Kyuss toured with Metallica because they were such fans of the band. I think that we
Mm.
always had the respect of the players around us, and I think that reputation kind of helped carry us, higher and higher in the food chain. Um, I think the band would have just plowed ahead no matter what. I mean, I think they made music because they felt it and they had to get it out. But we were fortunate that we had become a band's band. Bands wanted us to open for them, so that was always a big leg up in trying to build our audience. Really important, like bands like Faith No More and Danzig took us out on early tours. Metallica. So yeah, that really helped us to build a fan base. Definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's a great phrase. I don't think that's one that's been said on the show before. A band's band. I love that. I've never heard that term before, but I totally understand exactly what it means. And there's a few bands that come to mind that they're like, yeah, oh my god, like I can't believe I never realized it before. These are totally bands. But
Yeah.
you mentioned a name like Metallica, and for me, it's you know, that's like we're talking about. I mean, at same level. I mean, I hold they're in that pantheon, of that early era as well. Was there any starstruck moment for you in those early years where you were like on tour with the band, or playing with the band, or even just meeting someone where you were like, mm, hmm, hmm.
Um, yeah, interesting. I think being in the company of the people we respected was always super cool. Like talking about being a band's band. We'd be doing a festival in Europe and look at the side of the stage, and it would be every band that was on that festival would be standing on either side of the stage watching us. So I think not necessarily being starstruck, but having the respect of the people that we respected was always a great feeling.
That's not something that a lot of people can boast about. I've produced my fair share of festivals, or have been a part of my fair share of festival productions, and it's really something when multiple bands are coming up to see a band on stage, and are there's actually, like, I mean, you and I both know, but for the sake of our listeners, readers, and viewers out there, there's not a lot of room. There's not a lot of space. You could often be standing in the wrong space and get banned for life. And to have an audience in that space, I don't use this word very often or lightly, but that's got to be a pretty awesome experience.
Definitely reaffirming that you've made a good choice to learn to play this instrument, I guess.
So, what was well, you know what? I'm going to scratch that question and move on to the next one, because you know what? It's my show. We're going to do that. Now, when I was coming up, the first Queens of the Stone Age album I personally was introduced to, that I remember oh so well, is Songs for the Deaf.
Hmm.
And I mean, of course, with the hit single No One Knows, among so many other great songs. Another question I've been dying to ask: when you were working on that record, was there a feeling that it would be or that it would become what it is? Because to me, even all these years later, over 20 years since its release, um, Songs for the Deaf to me remains the ultimate Queens of the Stone Age album, and no one can convince me otherwise. Every single's, I mean, cover to cover, it's just banger after banger after banger. And I've always wanted to ask, was there that sensation? Was that palpable with the band and the crew as well?
Um, we knew it was a great concept for starters. The drive from the city to the desert, that it was a great way to kind of present the music and present a little bit about where we're from, that drive that you would take to get to the desert. So conceptually, we were all super excited about it. Dave Grohl showing up to play drums definitely realized, okay, this is the next. We've achieved the next level. We've got one of the best drummers in the world playing drums. Um, yeah, I don't know that we went into it thinking that this is going to be the greatest album ever. We just knew there was a great concept and some great players wanted to be involved.
Were you surprised at all by the critical reception of the album or the audience
Once it was
reception?
done, no. Once it was done, once we sat back and listened to it, we knew we'd made a fantastic record.
Can you? There have been interviews that I've watched back, that I have this feeling of just immense satisfaction that, like, I'm so glad that this information is getting out there. Song like No One Knows, what will kind of try to put into words that feeling of hearing that final product with everyone in the room and the nods.
Hmm. Yeah, I videotaped the whole thing, and I kind of saw the whole recording of the album through a video camera, which was an interesting lens, to see it going down. And at the end of the day, we'd go through the footage and see what we'd captured. Um, I don't know that I fully realized like what was going to happen while it was being made. To be honest, it was really when we saw the complete package that we realized what we'd made.
And
And then
around
wait, just to add
oh,
just to
oh,
add a little something to it,
please do.
I did all the artwork for that album and designed the Q
Really?
logo. Yeah, I did a few albums for the Queens.
I had no I had first ladies and gentlemen, viewers, readers, and listeners, I genuinely didn't know that. So that's actually a factoid I was unable to unearth. That's really really.
Everything, all the packaging was my design. And I was so happy to come up with an iconic logo. Like I always wanted to create like the black fat flag bars, just something where you just saw it and you knew, oh, that's them.
Immediately you see
Yeah.
you see I still have it. It's in my
Yeah. Yeah.
it's in my CD booklet. I still have I had no idea.
Yeah, man.
That's incredible, and that actually segues perfectly into my next topic, which is art. One of our mutual friends, which I mean, to me, we talked a little bit earlier about starstruck and more being a band's band, and I kind of feel like in some ways I'm an artist's podcaster.
Uh-huh.
Like I've been really sometimes surprised by the people who agree to come on. Not because I was expecting them to say no, but just because I don't really expect anyone to say yes. I just try to leave it an open book, and whoever says yes, great, and whoever says no, that's okay. Um,
It's a good
and
idea. That's why, bro. It's a good idea.
can't control other people, man. Like, people are going to do what they're going to do. And I will say this for the record, every single time when there was a delay or a reschedule or any sort of thing that hung up an episode from happening, whenever that guest did appear on the show, the episode is always better for it. And I always believe we came out with a better product and all good things and all good time. We just, as of today, actually, at the time of this taping, we just finished our 5th season with our 99th episode and the return of our mutual friend of the show, Justin Hampton.
Yeah, man.
And I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if you, but I have been a fan of Justin's unintentionally since I was about 7 years old. Because when I was a kid, he designed a handful of cards in the Magic the Gathering Ice Age 2 set. And that's the set that I played when I was a kid. And I loved the Twitch comics. And I had no idea it was him. And only later, when I started going to shows, did I realize, like, oh my God, like, whoa. And he was the first person who, when I reached out to him and said, hey, let's promote this Kickstarter for this book, he was the first person that I was truly like, wow. He said, yeah, like that's wild. Like this is somebody I've admired forever. And one of so much of his great artwork has come from work for Queens of the Stone Age.
Mm-hmm.
And the band and the artists achieved a milestone. The
I think
closest,
that's another part of the success of the Songs for the Deaf, because we came out with a poster for every concert. The people at P&E collaborated with us, and that was huge. That was also part of like putting ourselves on the map. We've got a quality audio, visual, quality everything. We had a complete package to give the audience, and
and
the P&E folks were a big part of that.
what's really wild is that from what I understand, and I've tried to do as much research on this as possible, the closest that a band had come prior to the 2002-2003 Queens of the Stone Age tour with a print for every gig was Pearl Jam in 2000. From what I understand, they are the ones who came the closest. Now, when I talked to Justin, and I would love to get your input on this, he kind of talked a little bit more about how he and Jermaine and Emick, worked the process amongst themselves. I'm more curious to ask you, how did the relationship begin with Justin and with
Mm-hmm.
Jermaine and Emick, and obviously, post neo explosionism and what that became. But where did that meeting start? Was that part of the Seattle move?
I think that was part of the Seattle connection. Yeah, when Josh went to school up in Seattle, he also ended up joining a band called the Screaming Trees. And so I think, there's just a big looping in there. And
Josh was
then,
in the Screaming Trees.
yeah, yeah. And that's when he called me up to Seattle. I became Screaming Trees engineer. And then when the Trees disbanded, Mark Lanigan came down and joined us with the Queens.
And that's how could I forget that connection? Yes. Yeah.
And then back to the
Yeah.
poster guys, they took the Queen, the Q logo that I made, and they incorporated it into every poster they made. So there was a tie-in with the album artwork, always in their artwork. They had total freedom to do whatever they wanted, but they always tied in our album artwork with their work. So that was all part of a great master plan.
What was the impetus for having a poster at every show? Was it part of the theme of the album of being on the
Mm,
road?
No, to say that I was there. Like people always go, I was at that gig. Well, no, you weren't. There was only 10 people there. But, you went home with something that proved you were there.
Hmm. Now we currently are in I mean, there is a poster art economy. You know, we've had many wonderful artists on the show. How does it feel looking back to kind of have been not just at the forefront, but like the formation of that movement?
I think it kind of goes back to the idea of your shows. There's just a lot of people involved in this business, and I think it's yeah, there's a lot of people involved, and the poster artists have become an important part of it.
What was the initial reaction to some of the early poster designs? How was this like a band decision, or like I think you mentioned that you just kind of let them have free, but did you see
Yeah,
proofs
definitely.
beforehand?
Josh and I always joked that you can't go wrong with putting a naked woman or a skull driving a hot rod. You know, can't go wrong with that. It'll always sell to somebody. But those guys took it so much further. Obviously, you know.
And folks, if you haven't checked out those posters, please do. They're a trip and a half. I mean, they're really uh
Yeah,
they're
Emick did some crazy ones. He did a Twister game like the spinner. You know, the old '60s game Twister. He printed his posters on some really cool materials like X-ray paper and
Jermaine
just
did one that I recall of just like Jermaine's done a few. Jermaine did one when I saw them at the Aragon Ballroom. I was fortunate enough that he did that show. Um, kind of getting back to the timeline of the band. The next my second favorite Queens of the Stone Age album is I believe a pivotal moment for the band was Era Vulgaris.
hmm
What was
definitely.
what was the temperature when that album was going on?
Um, yeah, I think there was just trying to break some new ground and utilize some of the new production techniques that were available. I mean, it's a very different sounding album from prior Queen's albums. I think there's some definitely some aggressive uses of technology and some not like not just digital technology but analog technology. There was some really abusive uses of old analog technology that people probably wouldn't have expected, like the way that drum sounds were achieved. Probably not what anybody would have ever dreamt of. That things like every drum that had a microphone on it, that microphone went into a tiny little PV amplifier, and then that was mic'd as the drum sound. So just like Josh was going for it. He was experimenting heavy, just trying to break new ground, trying to get something different out of the studio.
Now you had mentioned earlier that Kyuss set the band up well, and that
Yeah, definitely.
it was a band's band that bands came to watch. And if bands are coming to watch, people are coming to watch, right? Now, one thing that I notice when I look at those posters from that run in 2002 and 2003 is that those are some big rooms. What was it like scaling up? And what was the I don't quite know how to put this, but what was the evolution of the technology that you were using, you know, as rooms got bigger and bigger and bigger? Like how did you step up to meet that curve?
Um, I mean, a lot of the sound systems were scaled for the room they were in, and were just part of a tour package. Obviously, the technology has when we were first touring, we weren't using line array systems, which is very popular now. That's the hanging kind of banana speaker configurations that you see. A lot of the stuff we did was just point source, so that was like a ground stack that was just a wall of sound. Um, so as the technology improved, our sound improved. I mean, that was the reason for them trying to improve this technology. So every seat in the house became a better seat for the audience. You know, that was one of the benefits of scaling up with this new technology. A point source system is kind of good for the first couple hundred people, but somebody who's purchased a seat in the bleachers in the back is not going to get the same effect from a ground stack as they get now from a line array system.
And just for our readers, listeners, and viewers who don't know, would you mind explaining what are and the differences between the two different systems?
Yeah. So a ground stack sound system would be something that is stacked on the ground. The PAs, the bass bins are on the ground, and the next part sits on top of that, and the next part sits on that. A line array system is something that's usually flown from the roof. And when you go to a concert, you see these kind of single columns of speakers that are in kind of a curve. And each one of those speakers has a time delay ability to them so that the person who's hearing the speaker down here, the sound is hitting them at the same time as the speaker that's up high that's hitting the person in the back room. You can actually delay each speaker so that they all throw at the same time.
That's fast. It's so that's fascinating. I it never occurred to me. No, and it just never occurred to me that like
Because it would take
I
the speaker at the top longer to get sound to the back of the room.
well
So you delay the
also
speaker that's pointing straight down to wait for the speaker at the top. You know what I mean? So it's all working together.
oh, absolutely. And just from experience being in the front of a room or back of a room or even in the middle of a room, you could tell what the level of front of house production is just based on the quality of sound where you're at. Like if you're in the middle of the room and you can't hear anything, then it's not done upright.
Yeah, somebody's done a bad job of aligning the PA. Because today's
You know,
technology, every seat in the house should be a great seat.
Yeah. The only personal experience that I've had with the opposite was just a room that I thought was impossible to make sound good. And I have to give a shout out to my friend Marshall Towski for making that room sound incredible. But what I was actually thinking of was, you know, arena shows
Yeah,
because now I'm when I think of the delay that I'm still on that. I'm still delayed on that delay and that effect because it's so true that decibel levels travel at a certain speed and that people who are farther away are going to hear it at a different time. And you want to make sure that it's heard
yeah, it might be
uniformly.
a microsecond, but it is different from what the people in the front row are getting.
And it makes a big difference. It makes
Yeah,
every little. So how do you go about like, is there just a setting that you're configuring in each speaker?
yeah.
How or
There's a computer program. They call it DSP sometimes, and so that each individual speaker has a little clock in it, and you can say, "Hey, I don't want you to let go of your sound, for zero point 0.5 milliseconds." And you up above that, you can let go of your sound at zero point 0.4 milliseconds. And so you just tell all the speakers, when you want them to let go of their sound.
was
And
there
really
ever
simplifying it.
yeah, was there ever a show in particular that you just felt didn't sound as good as you hoped? And then on the opposite, was there a show that you felt like afterwards like I did my fucking job today?
We played this one festival, and it went so poorly. We got rushed onto the stage. I'm watching the show from a giant screen because I'm so far away from the band. And I can see Mark Lanigan go up to the microphone to sing the first word of the song. And I can see there's no cable plugged into his microphone. Like I wasn't up there and able to do that because it took me 20 minutes just to get to my sound position. So somebody on stage who's in charge of plugging things in didn't get that plugged in time. And that was just the beginning of this spiral of hell. And most of us from the band from that day, most of us in the band have a tattoo on our rib cages that says Freitag 4:15 because it was Friday in Germany at 4:15 that we had the worst show of our lives. So Josh, Nick, me, we all have a tattoo on our rib cage that says Freitag 4:15. It was just a helpless feeling. I'm just looking at this giant screen, close up of a guy with no cable sticking into his mic
You
about
know,
to sing.
It reminds me of that one part when when Frank introduces cheapness on Roxy and Elsewhere. He goes, hey, there's a cardboard cutout, and you just imagine there's a guy off screen going, no, 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 trying to pull it away. But the scene was too good. I feel like it's got to be like slow motion train wreck almost, where you're just like, I know what's about to happen, and there's
And there's
nothing I can do.
nothing.
What about the opposite, though?
The opposite, it's hard to pinpoint one, but I think my favorite experiences in the audio world are probably venues around like 1,500 to 3,000 capacity, where the audience can really change the temperature of the room with their enthusiasm. And the sound can really change the temperature of the room too, just by pure friction and power, like that's always really satisfying.
I'm pretty sure you and I were at one of the same shows where that happened. I was fortunate enough to catch a show on the Them Crooked Vultures tour.
I mixed that tour.
That what
venue was it? I can't remember. Was that in the Chicago area?
In Chicago at the Aragon.
Oh yeah, okay. I remember that gig.
The Aragon, it's an interesting venue because it's one of the few venues in Chicago that's like so polarized. You love it or you hate it, and there's extremes. Now, one of my formative concert experiences, I saw MGMT open for Beck there, which was just like it was right before Oracular.
Sure, that was awesome.
It was right before Oracular Spectacular came out. We had no idea who they were, and they just blew the lid off the place. And I personally loved that room. It's one of my favorite places to see a show in Chicago. And I attended that show, and one of the things I love is that the floor bounces when the crowd is really going.
Yeah, it's
and that
was a spring-loaded floor. Yeah.
And few shows outside of Queens of the Stone Age and Ween, made that place shake the way that it did. I want to talk a little bit about Them Crooked Vultures. What was your role? You mentioned that you mixed.
Yeah, I was their front of house engineer, so I mixed all the live concerts.
How was it being on the road with them?
An honor. I couldn't believe that every night I had a volume knob for John Paul Jones, and that I could turn him up as loud as I wanted. That's an honor. And he's a full-time player. Like, he does not stop playing. I mean, after we would sound check the Vultures, he would be backstage with his bluegrass buddies playing his mandolin for a couple hours, put that down just before showtime, put the bass back on, and go play with the Crooked Vultures. He doesn't stop playing. It's incredible.
I mean, talk about, for those who don't know, Them Crooked Vultures is a band that put out one album in 2014, and it's Josh Homme, Dave Grohl, and John Paul Jones, and
a fellow named Alan Johannes, who to me was the sleeping giant on the stage, maybe the best musician I've ever known in my whole life. Like, and he's on stage with those guys, and I'm saying he's the best musician I've ever known. People didn't realize, like, the incredible player that was just sort of in the shadows.
Would I dare say he's a musician's musician?
Absolutely. Yeah. He was in a band called 11. He's produced so many records over the years. He was one of the first people to use Pro Tools for recording. So he did, I think he did No Doubt records. He probably did Soundgarden records. I could be wrong, but he really did a lot of early Pro Tool work. He was one of the first people that was using that tool.
So as we come back in from the cut, we were just talking about Joshua Tree. And I remember when I first met Mario, and he told me he was from Joshua Tree. And I had only ever known of it as kind of like a place that sort of existed, and it was a U2 album. And that was really just about all that I knew about it. I didn't know there were actually people who were from Joshua Tree, but Mario and his family are from Joshua Tree, and that's how I got in touch with several guests who have been on the show, but
Mhm.
nearby to you, Mr. Christopher Thorne from a little
Yeah,
band
yeah,
called Blind Melon, and
yeah,
has a place called Fireside Sound Studio.
yeah.
And I wanted to have some time to talk about, your space and what you've got going on over in Joshua Tree.
Well, there's a fellow named Dave Catching who owns a recording studio on the property called Rancho de la Luna. Foo Fighters, Arctic Monkeys, Iggy Pop, Joe Walsh. So many people have recorded there. Les Claypool was down for Desert Sessions, the last Desert Sessions we did there. It's kind of like a clubhouse. Um, it's just a house, and with you might be recording a guitar track while somebody's baking something or cooking eggs on the stovetop right beside you. Like it's you're just it's just a house. It's not. It doesn't. It's a recording studio, but it's just a house. It doesn't have any fancy studio things in it. It's just a pile of instruments and an incredibly inspiring environment.
And I remember in my conversation with Christopher, that's kind of exactly what he was going for with his space, is just have like a place to be.
Yeah,
Be yourself, be however, whoever, whatever, just to be, and have, the tools, the instruments to be able to be.
yeah,
And, with that small place, not only are there the great studios, but one of the great historic venues in America, Pappy and Harriet's.
hmm
And I was hoping to hear a little bit about your history with the venue.
Um, when I first started going there, it was really just a roadhouse, and the people would be there with their children and their dogs walking around, almost like a not a dirt floor, but a sawdust kind of floor in the place. And you saw bikers and people pulling in their ATVs, and it was just a really a roadhouse and a great mix of the population at the time. I think we might have shot ourselves a little bit in the foot bringing Anthony Bourdain there when we did an episode of his show. Um, it was good for business, but it made it harder to get into the venue that used to be our local.
Yeah,
But it's a fantastic venue, and it's so cool to see people of that caliber that close. You can Paul McCartney played there. You could stand 5 feet away from Paul McCartney. It's an amazing little venue. Kind of like how CBGB's is like or was like. Was a total shithole, but it was an amazing shithole.
the first three venues that I performed at as a comedian in Chicago are now no longer in existence, and they were all shitholes. And you know what? They were my shitholes,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
I loved them. But really though, it's almost a blessing being in an area where there are so many venues that distract from places like that. So you kind of do get to keep those places to yourself. I mean, Pappy and Harriet's by all means, deserves every single accolade that it
For
gets,
sure, for sure.
but does not necessarily, maybe not necessarily should have been a national destination. I mean, I feel like if it had preserved its original character as how you had mentioned it would still be running strong regardless.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And the women who kind of pulled it up by the bootstraps and turned it into what it is have done a great job. It's a great venue. I get frustrated sometimes, and it's hard to get in.
That is fair, but I mean, that being said, I mean, it is I'm consistently amazed when I see the people who play there. I mean, it's
Oh yeah,
really just like, I
yeah,
mean, it's like, you're right, like CBGB is like, I mean, like, it's hard to think of places with that level of like clout that like you gotta play there.
yeah,
Wetlands, I
yeah,
think
yeah.
maybe
Like
could
you
have
might
been
have just
one.
played the Hollywood Bowl the night before, but you're stoked to go play Pappy and Harriet's the next night.
and that's going to be the one that you're going to be upset if you don't play. Like I was
Yeah.
out there, I didn't get invited to play Pappy and Harriet. Like that's going to be the regret, not the Hollywood Bowl. It's going to be like it's going to be the end. Yeah. So, what's your career like these days? What are you doing lately?
A little bit of tour work, not as much as I used to. I think we were talking about mixing the Circle Jerks, one of the founding LA hardcore bands. We did a gig at the Palladium a few weeks ago, and it was the singer's 70th birthday. Imagine punk rock, has 70th birthdays in it now. It's who
It's
knew? Who knew? I
the
thought
the way it should
Live Fast, Die Young was gonna take us all out, but some of us have
You forgot
survived.
the last part. Live fast, die young, leave a good looking corpse.
um, Yeah, so a little bit of work with the Jerks, and then I've been doing work with Kim Deal and the Breeders and her solo projects. Locally, I just finished mixing a 42-piece Philharmonic orchestra. This year's program was all medieval Christmas songs, so that was kind of cool. People don't expect that our little town can support something like that, or that we have enough musicians to make an orchestra that big, but we really do. We
I
have a
feel like
Marine
that's
base.
like a tangible percentage above zero of your population.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's
yeah. We have a Marine base down at one end of our little valley here, and we've gotten lots of great players from the Marine base. We have this posse of violinists and cello players that are a little bit older and came from, I think, like Hollywood movie score background, and they've ended up in Palm Springs now, and so now they come up and play in our orchestra. So it's this amazing cross section of people that are all happy to have a venue for their skill set.
I love it. It's like a pride of lions. It's a posse of violinists. That's but it's incredible that it's such a place attracts so much talent, and it really like I think it is really just a testament to the folks who are creative who are there, and that without because there are so many of those smaller places all throughout the country, not that they aren't great places, but it does help having that experience and that name to be able to bring other people, to continue to pass down the tradition that the love of music didn't start with us, and it's our job to pass it on to the next generation.
Yeah, Joshua Tree has a pretty long musical history. I mean, we have oh, now I'm going to totally space on his name. Graham Parsons. I think he kind of put Joshua Tree on the map with his passing at the Joshua Tree Hotel. Um, there's always been a lot of musicians up here. Just in my backyard, there's a woman named Victoria Williams, very very talented lady. Yeah, this town is full of musicians.
And you would never expect it. I mean, talent comes from the strangest of places and in the smallest of areas. And I think, though, there is something to be said for providing that space for that talent to flourish. I do think that that should not be understated. That folks like you and Christopher are providing that space to allow artists to feel comfortable, whether they're older, whether they're as recent as Daniel Donato, who was
Mm-hmm.
up not too long ago. I mean, it's incredible to see the new generation coming up and being with the people who are the ones that they looked up to when they were learning their instruments. It's microphone inception, folks.
Yeah,
What is that?
well, the microphone you are singing into, I used to be an endorsee of Shure microphones. I got approached by the singer Kyuss, the guy with the star in his eye, to take the vintage version of your microphone and put an SM58 microphone capsule in it because nobody liked how the old one sounded. So I kind of deconstructed that microphone and an SM58 and fit the ball into it. And then I told Shure about it thinking I was doing something cool. And they said, dude, you got to stop making those because we're going to make a version of that. And that's what you're talking into right now.
It's it is incredible to hear the backstory of my own microphone, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I couldn't think of a better way to close out this interview. Hutch, are there any words you'd like to share with our audience before we close out this week's episode?
Um, don't waste time doing shit you don't like. Enjoy your time here, man. Have fun.
Words to live by. Folks, this is Hutch. I'm Steiner. This is Secondhand Talent. We will see you next Wednesday. And that's a podcast. There we
Right
go.
on.
We did it. All right.